West Memphis, Arkansas, May 5, 1993. A day etched in darkness. 3 8-year-old boys vanished. Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, Christopher Byers. Their bikes found abandoned, a chilling sign. Hope dwindled with each passing hour. The next day, the unthinkable. Their small bodies, battered and bound, emerged from the murky waters of a drainage ditch in Robin Hood Hills. A community shattered, innocence stolen. The boys were left naked, hogtied with their own shoelaces. The brutality of the crime scene sent shockwaves through the town. Whispers of satanic rituals and occult practices filled the air, fueled by fear and speculation. The community, desperate for answers, craved justice. The question on everyone's mind: who could commit such a horrific act? The investigation began frantically. Police, under immense pressure, zeroed in on 3 teenagers: Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jessie Misskelley Jr. They were different, outsiders. Damien, with his love for heavy metal and black clothing, was an easy target. Jason, quiet and withdrawn, was painted as his accomplice. And Jessie, with his intellectual disabilities, became the most vulnerable link. He was interrogated for hours without a lawyer, pressured to confess to a crime he didn't commit. Their lives, once filled with the typical angst of adolescence, were now entangled in a web of suspicion and fear. The weight of the accusations bore down on them. The small town, blinded by grief and suspicion, was ready to point the finger. The stage was set for a trial that would expose the fragility of justice. The trial commenced in an atmosphere thick with prejudice and fear. The prosecution, lacking physical evidence, built their case on a foundation of conjecture and fear-mongering. Jessie's coerced confession, riddled with inconsistencies, became their centerpiece. They painted a picture of satanic rituals, fueled by the boys' supposed interest in the occult. The defense fought valiantly, highlighting the lack of physical evidence and the dubious nature of the confession. But fear, it seemed, had clouded the judgment of the jury. The verdict sent shockwaves through the nation. Damien Echols, the supposed ringleader, was sentenced to death. Jason Baldwin received life in prison. And Jessie Misskelley, despite his intellectual limitations, was condemned to 40 years. Justice, it seemed, had failed. Section 4. Paradise Lost. Doubts emerge. The case of the West Memphis Three, however, refused to fade into obscurity. Whispers of doubt, initially confined to the town, began to echo across the nation. Documentaries like our own Paradise Lost, The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills, brought the case into sharp focus. We showcased the flaws in the investigation, the lack of concrete evidence, and the reliance on coerced confessions. Public figures, celebrities, and legal experts rallied behind the cause, demanding justice for the 3 men they believed were wrongly convicted. The world began to question, had West Memphis convicted 3 innocent teenagers to quell the town's fears? The seeds of doubt blossomed into a national movement demanding a retrial, a re-examination of the evidence, and a chance for the truth to finally surface. In Section 5, The Truth in the DNA. Years turned into a decade and then another. The fight for justice continued. Finally, a glimmer of hope emerged from the cold, hard facts of science. New DNA evidence, notably absent from the original trial, was tested. The results were undeniable. None of the DNA found at the crime scene matched Damien, Jason, or Jessie. The very foundation of the prosecution's case crumbled. Public pressure mounted. How could 3 men be imprisoned for a crime they didn't commit? The state of Arkansas, however, clung to their conviction. They refused to acknowledge the possibility of a wrongful conviction. Years of legal battles ensued, each hearing chipping away at the facade of certainty surrounding the case. Section 6. An Imperfect Freedom. Finally, in 2011, a deal was struck. The state of Arkansas, unwilling to admit their mistake, offered the West Memphis Three a deal, an Alford plea. This legal maneuver would allow them to maintain their innocence while acknowledging the prosecution had enough evidence for a conviction, despite the new evidence. It was a bitter pill to swallow, a compromise that left a lingering sense of injustice, but it meant freedom. Damien, Jason, and Jessie, after spending 18 years of their lives behind bars, were released. Their release was met with a mix of relief and anger, relief that their nightmare was finally over, but anger that true justice remained elusive. The fight, however, was far from over. The Alford plea, while granting them freedom, left their names forever linked to a crime they didn't commit. Section 7. Justice still out of reach. The West Memphis 3 case stands as a stark reminder of the fallibility of the justice system. It highlights the dangers of tunnel vision, of how fear and prejudice can poison a jury's perception. The fight for full exoneration continues to this day. Damien, Jason, and Jessie deserve to have their names cleared, to be recognized as victims of a miscarriage of justice. The real perpetrator of this horrific crime may still be at large, and the families of Stevie, Michael, and Christopher deserve true closure. The case of the West Memphis 3 is a story that refuses to be forgotten. It's a story that demands accountability, that calls for a re-examination of our systems, and a reaffirmation of our commitment to justice. The truth, though elusive, is worth fighting for. It is a debt we owe to the memory of 3 innocent boys, and the 3 men whose lives were forever altered by the shadow of Robin Hood Hills.